Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon Battles. My name's Joe. Hey, hopefully you've watched us. Hopefully you see some of the things we do. Today's going to be a little bit of a different kind of episode. Some people may or may not agree with what we're getting ready to talk about, but we're going to do it anyway. Today we want to talk to you about the right way to drink bourbon. Stick with us and we'll get right to it. Okay, let's get into it. So, the right way to drink bourbon. There's a lot of ways to drink bourbon, and we're going to only highlight a few of those today. What's that mean? Well, we're going to get to that when we get through this. So, I can remember being in a bar one day. Chad was with me, and we talked to a bartender, and somehow the comment came up about somebody ordering Pappy Van Winkle and Diet Coke or something to that effect. And he said, I would not serve that. And I think that's absolutely ludicrous. If you have the 50 or 60 bucks it costs for a pour of Pappy, whatever it might be, and you want to put it in a Diet Coke, that's your business. We're going to talk today about the best way to drink bourbon, no matter what anybody says. So let's go through a couple different ways, and we'll get to the ultimate point of that. Okay, so let's get to the very first way to drink bourbon. Contrary to popular belief, this is not the most popular way to drink bourbon. So let's just look at it here. This is one of my favorite whiskeys in the world. If you've watched this very long, you know Maker's Mark. This happens to be a private select from a liquor store, right? So if you know anything about these, check these out. Some of the best values in whiskey, in my opinion, bar none. So this is how I would drink Maker's Mark Private Select. I would drink it neat. I would also put it in a Glencairn. The reason for the Glencairn is that tulip design brings those aromas and kind of concentrates them on the top there, so you can really enjoy that experience. A lot of guys will swirl it. A lot of guys will tell you, whatever you do, don't swirl it. Try it both ways. You do what you like. You do you. I personally love to use a Glencairn glass, and I drink the majority of my whiskey neat. That's how I like to do it. Did I start out one day saying, I'm going to drink neat whiskey? This is 110 proof. It's high proof, but it's not crazy high. Did anybody start out drinking crazy high proof whiskey? Did you drink Coy Hill? Was that the first whiskey you ever drank and you drank it neat and said, holy shit, that's good? No, you did not. Nobody did. So you work up to these things. So as we go through this list, some of these things are for people that are fairly new. Some of them are, I still like a lot of this stuff. So let's see what we think about neat. Yeah, it's room temperature. This wasn't in the freezer or anything. This is how I like to enjoy bourbon as a spirit. It's also how I like to enjoy rum and tequila for the most part. It's my favorite way. Doesn't have to be your favorite way. It is a very popular way. Let's move right on. This is another really popular way to drink whiskey. On a big rock, right? If you see this, these are these giant ice cubes that people love. So a lot of times, this is the way to do it, right? These ice cubes melt slower because of their size, which keeps more of the flavor, right? This is Old Granddad 114, higher proof whiskey. Love it. If you love the Jim Beam profile, you don't have a bottle of that, get one. So you can let that stuff kind of simmer down a little bit and cut that proof a little bit. Some people like that chill, right? The chill to me kind of mutes some of the flavors, but maybe not to you. That's delicious. I could absolutely drink that. So typically you would, from this stage, once you get to this stage, your next stage would be the neat, right? That's perfectly fine. In fact, I can't tell you the last time I had some bourbon on a rock like that, but it's really good. Fantastic. And I'll tell you some of my guilty pleasures as we go along the way there through this. So the next thing you might do before you even get into this is an old fashioned. Now I apologize, I don't have any garnishes and I don't have simple syrup, but I do have this Elijah Craig old fashioned syrup, which I think is a great way to do it. So a little bit of that, and Chad's really turned me on to this. One of the best, in my opinion, and I think he would agree, bourbons to use in an old fashioned is Angel's Envy. So old fashions, it's a cocktail, but it's got a lot of alcohol content in it, not a lot of mixer. Sweet, it's refreshing to me. That's very good. I actually really like that, and I love it with this finished bourbon. Normally they'd get an orange and a cherry and the whole 9 yards, as you know. Some people like to muddle the orange and cherry. I just had a bartender do that for me the other day. It's very good that way. That's how I did it for a very long time. It was a unique difference from the old fashions that I typically get. But sometimes I like the higher proof bourbons, like the Old Granddad 114 would make a great old fashioned. Sometimes I like even cast strength stuff. Elijah Craig barrel proof to me makes a good old fashioned, more of that whiskey flavor, and still get some of that sweetness showing through. That's very good. That's really good. I should have made a little more. So many of you have heard of a gentleman by the name of Elmer T. Lee, right? Elmer T. Lee, famed Buffalo Trace guy. I do not have a bottle of Elmer T. Lee, so I'm going to go with the regular Buffalo Trace here. This is how he liked to drink it. On a little bit of ice, just like that. And what? Elmer T. Lee like this? Lemon lime soda? Oh, and he also didn't like barrel strength products. Didn't understand why anybody would ever do it. Bourbon, Sprite, pretty tasty. Now, I'm going to get into one of my guilty pleasures. I'm going to get into a couple of them here. Ice. Oh, you're not going to believe this when you see it. Jim Beam Vanilla. What? That's not even bourbon. You're right, it's not bourbon. It's flavored whiskey, but you know what? It tastes good and I like it. So you drink that on ice? No, I drink it with Diet Coke. One of my absolute favorites. Jim Beam Vanilla and Diet Coke, Jim Beam Apple and Sprite. I love that kind of stuff. If I'm going up to the Purdue game, right? Boiler up right here. We got our first game on Saturday. This is probably what I'm going to tailgate with. And that surprises a lot of people to know that I love Jim Beam Vanilla. If you could see down on this bottom shelf here, I've got apple flavors, peach flavors, honey, cherry, Evan Williams cherry, Jim Beam Red Stag, cinnamon stuff, coffee flavored whiskeys, Jack Tennessee Fire, salted caramel whiskeys, cookie dough whiskey, orange whiskey. I've got a ton of that stuff and I like it. It tastes good. Don't let anybody tell you when you're really get into whiskey that you got to drink real high end stuff that's expensive. You drink what tastes good to you. That's where we're going with this whole thing. Drink what you like. That's the best way to drink bourbon. Period. End of story. No matter what anybody tells you, man. This right here, man, it is so good. Jim Beam Vanilla and Coke. If you haven't had that, go buy you a bottle of this stuff. It's like $12, $15, something like that. Try it. Leave me a comment on what you think about that, or the peach, or the apple with Sprite, or whatever crazy concoction you like with flavored whiskeys. Let me know. Let me know how you drink your whiskey. Do you drink it neat? You drink it on a cube? You drink old fashions? How do you do it? We want to know because you might show me something that I'd really like to try. And I've got two more to show you here. Man, we're going to use Glencairns for these last two because it's easy. And I have them sitting here. Bourbon of choice, right? Doesn't matter what it is. This happens to be a Buffalo Trace store pick. Buffalo Trace store picks are some of my favorite whiskey there ever was. And it's low proof. Oh my gosh. You mean you like low proof whiskey? I love low proof whiskey. I like high proof whiskey. I like cocktails. I like a lot of stuff. So here's what we're going to talk about for the last two. Just a little bit of that. What has he got there? Amaretto? Yes. Amaretto. Basically, with an ounce or two of bourbon, say 2 ounces of bourbon, a cap full of amaretto. What's that do? It changes the flavor. Makes it a cocktail. What's this? Butterscotch schnapps. 2 ounces of bourbon, cap full of butterscotch schnapps. That's crazy, you say. You're ruining good whiskey. No, I'm not. I'm changing good whiskey. Completely, totally different experience. You can do this with ice. You could do this, add Sprite to it. You can do it any way you want to do it. Play with these things. A little bit of amaretto. I play around with finishing whiskeys, and sometimes I use amaretto. But man, oh man, that butterscotch. If you've ever had a bourbon that just has crazy butterscotch notes, try doing that. Literally, start with half a cap to 2 ounces of bourbon, maybe even less. Maybe you start with a few drops and just figure out how to tweak it to your liking. Like that particular one, I got a little too much butterscotch in there, but it's very, very, very good. So let's summarize this up. Start with, everybody starts with something like this, right? Jack and Diet, Jim Beam Vanilla and Diet, regular Coke, whatever it is. Cocktails. Then you may want to progress on to an old fashioned. That is bourbon and Sprite. Then you go to an old fashioned. And you play with these quantities just a little bit where you're putting less, right? You're putting a splash of Coke in there. If you're really wanting to work your way up to the neat, right? That's how you do it. Then you work your way up to a cube. One of the things I did as I was starting to get into bourbon, I was at this cube stage, right? And I wanted something different. I was having a hard time with the higher proof stuff, just like everybody will. So I would bite off a chunk of like a sugar-free popsicle, orange, grape, cherry, whatever it is, and put it in there for my ice cube. It added flavor. It melted slow. It was delicious. That's pretty good. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll get into neat in a Glencairn. Don't hesitate to go to your local bar and say, give me a Pappy Van Winkle Pina Colada, or give me Maker's Mark cast strength with a splash of Sprite on ice. You do you. You do it the way you want to do it. The only way to drink bourbon is to do it the way you like it. And when you are drinking bourbon, do it with your friends. Drink it blind if you can. If you don't know what that means, go back and look at some of our other videos. We love to drink stuff blind. And whatever you do, don't drink and drive. Hey, we'll see you next time.
If you drink, don't drive, do the watermelon crawl.